setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president.
A source tells CNN that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is unhappy with this decision to investigate Powell, and he's warned Trump before of the impact that it could have on markets. Now, the White House says that Trump didn't direct this investigation, but if you listen to his many attacks, there's a clear motivation.
Did the president ever direct DOJ officials to open an investigation into Powell?
No.
I'd love to fire his ass. He should be fired. We're thinking about bringing a suit against Powell for incompetence. Guy's grossly incompetent, and he should be sued. I'd love to get the guy currently in there out right now. I would remove him in a heartbeat. It is possible there's fraud involved with the $2.7 billion renovation.
And can you reassure the American public that his longstanding criticisms and public comments about Powell had nothing to do with the investigation?
Look, the president has every right to criticize the Fed chair. He has a First Amendment right, just like all of you do. As for whether or not Jerome Powell is a criminal, that's an answer the Department of Justice is going to have to find out.
And if we had a Fed chairman that understood what he was doing, interest rates would be coming down too.
I think he's terrible. I think he's a total stiff.
He should resign immediately. We should get somebody in there that's going to lower interest rates.
So this all appears to be blowing up in the White House's faces tonight. We're hearing more and more Republicans, Mark Ford, who are basically saying, we're going to hold up anybody else that Trump might want to put in this job until this is done. And then interestingly, just a few minutes ago, Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., said the U.S. Attorney's Office contacted the Federal Reserve on multiple occasions to discuss cost overruns and the chairman's congressional testimony, but we were ignored, necessitating the use of the legal process, which is not a threat. The word indictment has come out of Mr. Powell's mouth, no one else's. None of this would have happened if they just responded to our outreach. First of all, that sounds very defensive to me. But secondly, I mean, do you buy that cost overruns would require the U.S. Attorney's Office to send a subpoena to the Federal Reserve?
I think probably in this case not, Abby. It seems pretty clear this has been a president's priority. I mean, one of the ironies is that he appointed and nominated Jerome Powell.
He seems to forget all the time.
Well, I was in the Oval Office when he had his three finalist candidates, and his question was, who's going to keep rates lowest? And the consensus was that Powell would. And so here we are, years later, and he's concerned that Powell doesn't have rates even lower. I'm not one of these who believes that the Fed is sacrosanct and isn't worthy of criticism. And I think that when we created a Fed, it didn't have $7 or $8 trillion in assets on its books. And so I think the president has every right to criticize. But I think everybody can see through this that this is really pushing to try to lower interest rates further. One of it is a serious criminal investigation. As you said, the reception from Senate Republicans has been really cold. And I think you'll probably see the president probably pivot and say that was somebody else taking that investigation on.
Look, Ronald Reagan, I'm sure, was not happy with Paul Volcker and his behavior at the Fed, but Ronald Reagan did not constantly berate Paul Volcker. In fact, had to deal with an economy that probably wasn't moving as fast as Ronald Reagan wanted it to move in the early 80s, because Volcker decided to keep interest rates higher than Reagan would have wanted. That's what happens, right? Because the monetary policy of the country needs to be segregated from its fiscal policy. And the President of the United States has all the authority in the world to navigate fiscal policy, but he needs to leave the Fed alone. If he doesn't, it doesn't just impact the markets here, it impacts the markets around the world. And if I were China today, I would be thrilled. I would be ecstatic. Because if you wanted to tank the global economy and make the dollar not be the reserve currency that all these countries use, you could not have done a better job. I mean, the bond vigilantes are probably going to be coming out of the woodwork, and it's nobody's fault that Donald Trump's right now.
Is it a coincidence? Letitia James Comey, Jerome Powell. I mean, I don't know. I mean, does the White House just think that it doesn't matter that they're being so transparently targeted in their politicization of the Justice Department? Or do they think that it doesn't look like targeting?
I think that this might be the first time that it does register with the president knows in his orbit that this is a really bad look for them. Jerome Powell doesn't make that statement unless he has absolutely no concern that he's going to be indicted, much less successfully prosecuted. A. B, it suggests that there's a lot of people in the federal bureaucracy who are insulated from purity tests, ideological purity tests, who are very frustrated with the prosecutions of the president's political opponents, James Comey, Letitia James, and in particular because they don't have any teeth to them. They backfired on the DOJ, they backfired on the Eastern District of Virginia, and those prosecutors are gone. One is now on the way out. And the president doesn't look especially good by pursuing these vendettas and then not securing the vindication that he sets out to secure for himself.
I've been kind of impressed
Yeah.
by Powell, right? Who looks so mousy and so geeky.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he's standing up for himself and saying, come at me. Really? I'm going to respond. I'm not going to be pushed around. He's hired a powerful attorney and he's seeming not to be afraid. He's
No mincing of
taking
words. Yeah.
on Trump. I also think it's rather rich and very ironic. It almost makes me chuckle that out of all the things that he's criticizing him on, it's cost overruns on
I
renovation.
know.
I mean,
There
this is
is
a guy
a
who
great irony
tore
in that.
the
That is
East
true.
Wing of the White House without consulting anybody, without getting any approval from anybody, did it overnight, started a ballroom that started at a budget of $250 million. It's at $400 million, and he's getting the money by extorting donations from business moguls that need a quid pro quo from him. And he's going to be the moral compass on cost overruns on renovations. It's funny.
It is a little bit rich, but to your point about Jerome Powell, and we just played back in July. This was one of the maybe top 10 moments of
Oh, yes.
2025. Trump goes to the Federal Reserve, and then they have this moment as they're talking to the media.
It looks like it's about 3.1 billion. It went up a little bit, or a lot. So the 2.7 is now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at the Fed. You just added in a third building is what that is. That's a third building.
Well, but it's a building that's being built.
No, it was built 5 years ago.
While they're wearing hats.
Right. I mean, just there's a side of incompetence there. It also seems, based on some of the digging that people have done, one of the things that Russ Vought has talked about, who's the budget person at the White House, he has basically said that he's looking at that Fed chairman said that there were two elements of the renovation, essentially, that are not happening anymore. And he's perhaps accusing him of lying to Congress about things that they are no longer doing to the renovation. Make it make sense.
Well, you can't, first of all. And it's interesting because the Federal Reserve and the Department of Justice as well only work when they are removed and independent from political pressure. What I find extra fascinating is that you can look on Wall Street and New Yorkers and on Main Street in my home state of Arkansas, and they agree. They don't want their economic institutions to be swayed by a political whim.
It's if you care about your money, that's your
Right.
business.
Right.
I mean, and Americans care about their money. And I actually just want to, first of all, I think that I'm a little surprised there are not more conservatives in Congress saying something. But let me just play what Ben Shapiro said about this today.
Is there evidence that Powell was stealing money or embezzling? Well, what is the case here, in other words? And why is it that the Trump administration, the two people who he seems to be focused on very much at the Federal Reserve, are people who have opposed his agenda? This is bad policy. You should not be targeting people based on specious investigations. If it turns out that it's specious, the president should not be intervening in Federal Reserve policy in this way. All it does is create uncertainty in an economy that is doing quite well by all available reports.
Yeah, a lot of important points that he made there. But, for conservatives who are MAGA Republicans, and they do firmly believe in their heart of hearts that there was a weaponization of the Biden Justice Department, how on earth can any of this be justified when some of these allegations are on the thinnest of reeds?
I think there's two separate things there. One is I've seen most of the commentary today from Republicans, from the moderates to the conservatives, all criticizing this. I even saw Steve Daines today coming out saying that he wants the Fed to stay independent and not for the president to do it. So I've seen it across the spectrum. But, I think your point's well taken, Abby, that I think one of the reasons Donald Trump was elected is because a lot of Americans are uncomfortable with the lawfare that they perceive the Biden administration was pursuing. And now it seems the Trump administration is doing the exact same thing against its political opponents. And I don't think that's what America's like.
I will add, however, that it is incumbent on Republicans in Congress and Congress generally to perform its oversight role. Punditry does not suffice for oversight of this administration.
Saw statements that are basically
Exactly.
like, you know, we would like the Fed to be independent, period.
Right,
See,
it's
that seems to
fascinating.
not address.
It's fascinating that, if I can, it's fascinating that the person I'm happy to be running against, French Hill, is the chair of the oversight of the Financial Services Committee. And what he said was more platitudes. Hey, look, you know, this is wrong. I'm a good friend of Powell's. What he didn't say is what action they're going to take to actually stop it or prevent this spiraling.
Tom
of debt.
Tillis
They're not
has
doing
been
it.
one of the few who actually
But he's
is
leading
putting some
14.
task. Yeah, but I mean, he can do something, right? He can hold up a nomination in committee, and if other Republicans join him, can hold it up on.
Well, Thorne pushed back on it, some. The one that didn't was Mike Johnson,
No.
who continues to be a rug you can step on, that Trump steps on a daily basis.
I mean, there's a lot of there could be conflict of partisan priorities here that Republicans have to be very wary of. But you could treat this like a neutral and dispassionate thing. You can say, look, we're going to adjudicate this claim dispassionately. Did Jerome Powell lie to us? Did he perjure before us? It's our responsibility to find that out. Or is the president dissimulating? Or are there rogue elements within his DOJ that are just going out and pursuing his priorities under the assumption that maybe he's going to like this, will freelance and will seek
I'm
out
not
the
sure how much of those elements are rogue. It kind of seems to me that every time we read in the news that Donald Trump is unhappy with Pam Bondi, somebody in his enemies list gets investigated or indicted or, you know,
But
pulled
that
into
is
some
a
sort.
headline, just so you know, that is a headline
Really?
that ran today, that he's privately unhappy with.
But he's unhappy with her because she hasn't moved fast enough to indict people. It's the opposite. It's not that he's unhappy with her because she's doing something that's rogue. He's unhappy with her because she's not doing enough to bring cases that he thinks his enemies need to be brought to justice
Listen,
for.
at least this time, he didn't send her a public tweet
Well,
telling her who to indict.
There's also the Epstein Files debacle.
Of
but
course,
it's a bit
because-
of a
And at the end of the day,
Because she
the
didn't
question that we
cover
have to
him.
ask is it going to make life more affordable for Americans? And this isn't helping.
But it's
Well, no, I mean, it might do quite the opposite.
It's the opposite.
It might do
Exactly.
the opposite. All right, next for us, days after the ICE shooting in Minneapolis, the Trump administration is sending 1,000 more agents into the state, and now Minnesota is suing. Plus, Iran has crossed Donald Trump's red line. So will the president attack now that protesters are being killed by the hundreds?